Hello wrestling fans, welcome back. ProWrestleMachine here. I'm back with another retrieval from the archive. I'm not Dave Meltzer. I'm a robot. Here we go. November 23, 1992 Observer Newsletter. Bulldog and Warrior done with WWE. Dan Severn debuts. Oregon Regs. By Observer staff. November 23, 1992. Probably the single worst thing that could happen to a promotion short of a scandal would be a pay-per-view main eventer walking out at the last minute. As everyone knows, that basically happened twice last week to Titan Sports as both Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig, and British Bulldog, David Davey Boy Smith, quit the promotion in moves that appear to be unrelated, except that they both happened within a day of each other. This forced Titan to come up with the emergency angle that aired Monday night on Primetime Wrestling, turning Curt Hennig babyface and teaming him with Randy Savage in the Survivor Series main event against Ric Flair and Razor Ramone. Although both men were said to have been fired by the company, other sources are claiming that each actually quit. Probably a little of both, although at least in the case of Warrior it was more quit than fired. The Warrior situation wasn't unexpected, but the Smith situation came with little warning. Some within the organization expected Warrior to be history before the television tapings in Canada, which saw Bret Hart win the WWF title and have Hart and Savage as the new tag team in Survivors. When that didn't transpire, it was pretty much considered a given that it was because so much had already gone into the advertising for the pay-per-view. It would be much easier to bite the bullet and wait until after the show to make any changes, but that Warrior would more likely than not be history shortly after the pay-per-view. That wasn't a definite, even though we were given the indication it was, since Warrior was still being planned to headline house shows in December, and they started an angle at the last television to start a new program with Nails, which would have died at the gate. However, it didn't hold together since Warrior quit 17 days before the show with no reasons nor plans being known other than talk he is going to try and merchandise himself independently. Smith attempted to leave the promotion on good terms, although it doesn't appear that many consider the situation all that good. Aside from the Survivor Series problem, the promotion had given both Randy Savage and Big Boss Man time off after Survivor Series. Warrior and Bulldog were the top two headline babyfaces on one of the two touring shows, causing the company to be forced to basically revamp much of the plans for the winter quarter. In addition, Warrior was going to most likely be the focal point of WrestleMania's main event, so Plan A is totally out the window. Bulldog apparently will start in January with All Japan. Titan sources have said the problem with Smith was he wanted superstar treatment because he felt he was the Hulk Hogan of Europe, which he pretty much was. While at some point, it would be no surprise to see Smith return, as he's quit the promotion twice in the past when he tagged with Dynamite Kid, both times mainly to work Japan and Calgary, and both times eventually returned, although the second time took a few years between tours. Warrior's career, at least in regard to the major two U.S. offices, looks to be over, at least at the present. Eventually almost everyone always comes back, Bob Backlund for instance. That's probably by his decision. While some would suggest WCW try and sign Warrior when he gets a contract release, which at press time isn't the case, it wouldn't work out because it's doubtful he'd agree to their salary structure and demands. Warrior didn't draw with Titan and he wouldn't draw with WCW either, nor would he have the right to use the name Ultimate Warrior, which is the main appeal he currently has, is simply the name is over. His huge muscular size that got the name over isn't there today and couldn't be regained under normal circumstances. That's not even getting into what he can do on a nightly basis at the house shows once the bell rings. I don't see how Warrior can fit into what WCW is doing, whatever that is. Smith, on the other hand, while he wouldn't be a big draw in the US either, would be a huge acquisition for the European market, which appears to have a lot more financial potential, at least over the short haul in 1993, for both groups. In fact, his presence should guarantee tons of merchandise sales for whomever would acquire those rights, and big gates in England in particular. With WCW going to Europe in March, it's the perfect time to make the acquisition that will be the biggest one possible in a fertile new market. One has to bring up another aspect, both men's shrinkage in muscle size and body weight over the past few months and the Titan steroid testing, which has changed the entire face of the promotion. Over the past few months, even though all the reasons for the departures have mainly been different, the Legion of Doom, Hulk Hogan, Warlord, Barbarian, Chris Walker, Sid Del Wilkes, Bulldog and Ultimate Warrior, the people on the most likely photos, have all departed the promotion, although Hogan may be back shortly, over a relatively short period of time. They have been replaced on top by the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, etc., who have also shrunk somewhat in size during the same period, but it was never the physical presence of their physique, rather what they could do in the ring, that gave them their position. After all the talk of not changing who they push and what type of wrestler would be pushed, the legitimate near elimination of the steroid freaks has forced Titan to make major changes, and the push for Hart and Michaels exemplifies this. The business being down by an even greater percentage than the physiques of the wrestlers have been over the same time frame seems to show that an awful lot of the fans who jumped into this because of the physiques jumped out when the physiques weren't there. However, there isn't much of a choice because the impressive size for size's sake is now only there in your earthquake types, so something has to be pushed. The overly creative gimmicks like Papa Shango and Nails have been a total failure, so it's either try ability or throw darts and choose who you push by whose name is on the dartboard. Random choice. In reality, this steroid story has resulted in some of the most widespread changes in the face of the #1 promotion in this country that anything this side of Akira Maeda's charisma, leading to the switch and emphasis on submissions in Japan and the Hogan/Road Warrior influence changing the US business 9 years ago has done over the past 10 years. Ironically, it has had only minimal effect on any other company. But if the Michaels-Hart match is as good as it looks to be on paper next week and Survivor Series as a whole is better than the recent pay-per-view shows, think about the real reason those two were on top and given the time and allowed to put on that kind of match. It was a decision made by Vince McMahon ultimately, but only because circumstances having to do with the changing laws and enforcement of such outside pressures and his own inability to tell the truth when he needed to put him in a position where he needed to make drastic changes. But even with a WWF title match that should by all rights be the best title match on pay-per-view as far as match quality in WWF history, the show is loaded with question marks. Hart and Michaels aren't being pushed as the main event to begin with, and one wonders how much interest that match can really generate as far as being able to turn it into dollars. Thus far, there is no indication Hart can draw on top. Business has remained terrible even with the box office spark of a new face champion. In Hart's defense, Rick Martel and the Mountie, who was being advertised against Hart on top in the recent cities even though he was replaced by Martel because he quit the promotion before the bouts took place, are hardly a fair test. The real test will be next month because he's working against Flair. And because they've loaded up the undercards, December will be more than a fair test. While a lot of people will order Survivor Series, particularly those who don't watch religiously, believing Warrior to be involved, the viewers who follow the promotion religiously are being asked to pay $24.95 to see a show without Warrior or Hogan, at least as far as wrestling on the show, without a title match with any strong interest, and a title match being confused by so many free WWF title matches on television this month, even though it should be a great match, and with a tag match that on paper is a flat main event changed by a last-minute predictable desperation angle that few saw in its first airing, Ramone and Flair vs. Savage and Curt Hennig. Although the angle on primetime was both predictable and reeked of desperation, one has to give Bobby Heenan credit for an incredible performance from start to finish. While that match sounds hot as far as work quality, Hennig's back is certainly a question mark, and Flair's doctor told him at least 6 weeks off just 3 weeks ago, so he's a question. You got to figure they'll probably both come through as far as a great performance on this show. Then you got to ask at what cost? Hennig had a super match with Bret Hart at a SummerSlam when he was nowhere near 100% and after being out a few months with a bad back. But the end result of that super match and all those guts was being out of action for 15 months, and what would have been many months longer had the situation within the promotion not become so desperate. The Hennig turn on primetime was seen by very few because that's the lowest rated show the promotion has. The Fox special, plugging Warrior to be there, was seen by very many in comparison. This is really a test of doing a pay-per-view show where everything originally planned out had to be thrown out. It should be noted the Hart-Michaels match was not in the original plans, since the original plans had Flair as champion through this show. In fact, the cable ads that were still running as of this weekend still listed Flair as WWF champion. The cable companies were sent an overnight message on November 11th to pull all video and print ads for the show until new ads could be sent. The memo stated new ads would be sent via satellite on Tuesday morning, November 17th, but nothing was sent up. It mentioned a change in the card in the memo, but instead of listing the change, simply said full details would be on Prime Time Wrestling on November 16th. I do know in this area that the cable company must have ignored it because they were running the old promos all weekend, which still listed Flair as WWF champion, and had the local guys talking about the card with the old lineup. Warrior and Smith weren't the only two wrestlers pulled at the last minute from major shows. I'm not talking about Robbie Walker being fired by WCW 1 week before the Clash, either. Just before the opening of the annual All Japan Tag Team Tournament, Giant Baba announced that Jumbo Tsuruta wouldn't be working the tour because he was hospitalized with an undisclosed internal disease. The disease is believed to be related to the gout that kept him out of action during much of the summer. Baba announced that Tsuruta's partner, Akira Tao would team with rookie Jun Akiyama in the tournament that started this past Saturday night. The elimination of Tsuruta seems on paper to make this one of the least interesting tournaments in years, as one would figure only two teams have a legitimate shot at winning, Terry Gordy and Steve Williams, who have won it the past 2 years, and Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada. It also throws a monkey wrench into what has traditionally been the most carefully booked tournament of the year anywhere in the world. Obviously the team of Tao and Akiyama isn't going to be put over all of the teams Tsuruta and Tao would, and those changes in a loss or two extra here and there throw careful planning right out the window. The tour opened Saturday night in Omiya with a television taping that included 5 tourney matches, Misawa and Kawada over Joel Deaton and Billy Black, Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace over Dan Crawford and Doug Furness, Tao and Akiyama over Dory Funk and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Gordy and Williams over Dan Spivey and Kendall Windham, and Giant Baba and Kenta Kobashi over Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala II. The tournament finals, on December 4th at Tokyo Budokan Hall, saw all 16,300 tickets sold by 1 p.m. on October 21st. Tickets were put on sale at 10 a.m. that day, and it'll be aired on closed circuit in several other cities. The Saturday night main event on Fox, 1-hour primetime special, aired November 14th. Overall it was a good show, largely due to Michaels' performance in the IC title match and the typical good production. They plugged Warrior and Savage as a team for the entire show, except at the very end has a brief bit where Heenan suddenly heard a rumor that they wouldn't team up, and they left it at that. In other words, casual people who don't watch religiously wouldn't have even picked up on it. Those who do would go back and see that as step 1 in the angle. They also during the show plugged Bulldog Mountie, which made no sense since both weren't even with the company, and you can't even say there were financial reasons of trying to steal based on bait and switch, since that match isn't going to draw any extra buys on its own. Obviously it could have been edited out since at least some of the commentary was done after Bulldog and Warrior were gone, if not all of it. I can't believe it was a mistake of overlooking something, because that doesn't happen on television with this company. The only thing I can come up with is just sheer arrogance when it comes to being able to get away with it. Warrior and Savage beat Money Incorporated via a walkout count-out in 6:09. DiBiase had his working shoes on. Those finishes show so little creativity. Just have the heels walk out and save the titles. After Hennig, Ramone and Flair all jumped Warrior and Savage afterwards, which in hindsight with Hennig involved and no words going back and forth made this all seem like an angle with the amount of thought put into it as the Brian Pillman turn with no storyline at the last Clash. 1.5 star. Michaels won the IC belt from Bulldog in 10-10. Bulldog did power moves, included 4 reps in the overhead press with Michaels. He started selling his back, doing a 1-arm clean and back suplex on Michaels. After the turnbuckle was uncovered, Bulldog took a bump back first into it. Michaels did one of the most incredible Ray Stevens flips into the turnbuckle ever, but his quick bumps as Bulldog broke out of Boston Crabs were too unrealistic. Bobby Heenan came forth with a line of the night as they were at Larry Bird's alma mater, and Heenan said, "Isn't this where Larry Canary went to school?" Finish saw Bulldog do a superplex, but his back couldn't hold and Michaels fell on top for the pin. 3.5 stars. Final event saw Bret Hart beat Papa Shango with the sharpshooter to keep the WWF title in 7:08. It was as good as it's going to be considering the amount of time they had and that Shango was in the match. 1.75 stars. The other highlights was a repeat airing of the Bret Hart video. Awesome, although those 2 kids rolling around with Stu Hart as ref almost surely had to be Stu's grandchildren rather than Bret as a kid. Stu looked too old for it to have been 25 years ago when Bret was that age. A few interviews which were good but not memorable, and a forgettable funeral parlor segment. Dennis Kozlowski, one of the most decorated Greco-Roman wrestlers in this country's history, was announced by UWFI on Thursday as going into pro wrestling. Kozlowski, who captured a silver medal in Greco-Roman wrestling representing the U.S. in Barcelona and won a bronze in the 1988 Seoul Games, is scheduled to make his pro wrestling debut on December 20th at Tokyo Sumo Hall against UWFI world champ Nobuhiko Takada in a main event. Kozlowski has been one of the best in the nation in Greco-Roman for more than a decade, with credentials that include a placing either first or second in the nationals every year but one going back to 1982, including 6 national titles in both the 220 and 286 class, placing in the World Championships every year but one since 1983, etc. Kozlowski's twin brother Dwayne, whose amateur career was very impressive as well, and included several place winnings in World Championships during the same time period but no Olympic hardware, has worked a few pro matches after also competing in the 1988 Olympics. Dwayne worked for the old UWF and of late for PWF in Japan after debuting on the November 1989 UWF Tokyo Dome show, putting over Takada. Another top U.S. amateur, Dan Severn, who took second in the nation while wrestling for Arizona State in 1980, a background similar to Steve Williams and Gary Albright, and during the 1980s won 6 U.S. National Samba Wrestling titles. Debuts for UWFI on November 25 in Nagoya against Yuko Miyato. Severn qualified for the Olympic trials in freestyle for the 1984, 1988 and 1992 Olympics, but failed to make the U.S. team because of the presence of Bruce Baumgardner, who wound up taking 1 silver and 2 golds. Results. October 29, Cuernavaca, Cmll, prelim results unavailable. Atlantis and Triton and Ultimo Dragon B. Negro Casas and Felino and Emilio Charles Jr. NWA LTHWT title, Apollo Dantes B. El Hijo del Solitario. October 29, Mexico City, UWA, prelim results unavailable. Dos Caras and El Texano and Silver King DDQ Connect and Dr. Wagner Jr. and Shu El Guerrero, WWF LTHWT title, Villano 3 B. El Signo. October 30, Milwaukee, WCW 400, Shane Douglas and Eric Watts B. Diamond Dallas Page and Scotty Flamingo, Tony Atlas B. Marcus Bagwell, Brian Pillman and Steve Austin B. Robbie Walker and Tom Zenk, Barbarian B. Van Hammer, Big Van Vader B. Nikita Koloff. U.S. title, Rick Rude D. Kensuke Sasaki. NWA and WCW tag title, Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham B. Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton. Sting B. Jake Roberts. October 30th, Bangkok, Thailand, JWP, 3200 Devil Masami B. Dynamite Kansai, Plum Mariko B. Sumiko Saito, Hikari Fukuoka B. Boyershoi Kid, Cutie Suzuki B. Mayumi Ozaki, Boyershoi and Masami and Fukuoka and Suzuki B. Kansai and Mariko and Fukuoka and Ozaki. November 2nd, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, JWP, Cutie Suzuki B. Heki, Mayumi Ozaki B. Toyama, Devil Masami B. Boyershoi Kid, Plum Mariko B. Dynamite Kansai, Hikari Fukuoka B. Sumiko Saito 2513. November 2nd, Hakata, All Japan Women, prelim results unavailable. Debbie Malenko and Saki Hasegawa D. Minami Toyota and Toshio Yamada 30 minutes, Kyoko Inoue and Asia Kong B. Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto. November 6th, East Lansing, Michigan, WWF, Max Moon B. Terry Taylor, Lance Cassidy B. Skinner, Head Shrinkers B. High Energy, Razor Ramone B. Randy Savage Core, Crush B. Berserker, IC title, British Bulldog B. Shawn Michaels Core, Cage Match, Nails B. Big Boss Man. November 6th, Dalton, Georgia, WCW, 350, Scotty Flamingo B. Robbie Walker, Eric Watts B. Tex Slashinger, Tom Zenk and Johnny Gunn B. Vinny Vegas and Diamond Dallas Page, Johnny B. Bad B. Michael Hayes NWA and WCW tag title, Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham B. Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton. November 7th, Houma, Louisiana, Deep South, 165, Bronco Bob B. Road Warrior, Dale Roberts B. Billy Steele, Handsome Johnny Rose B. Brian Cormier DQ, Frogman LeBlanc Kerr Dwayne McCulloch, Rose 1 Battle Royal. November 7th, Granite Falls, North Carolina, Fantasy Pro, 65, American GI B. Cole Minor, Billy Diamond B. Terminator DQ, Jake Steele B. John Sullivan, Chris and Jeff Hamrick B. Rick Star and Cherokee Renegade, Jeff Hamrick 1 Battle Royal. November 7th, Fairhaven, Vermont, UQ, 300, Canadian number 1 B. White Cloud, Joseph Oldie B. Flex Lavender, Jimmy Deo B. Ninja, Mondo Clean, Damian Demento, B. Vic Steamboat, Dr. Johnny Wildside B. Jeff Grippley, Billy Watkins B. Scott Taylor, Sioux War Party B. Canadians. November 8th, Arena Mexico in Mexico City, EMLL, El Filoso and Solar 2 B. Lynx and El Fierro Ponzonia and Panico and Kung Fu B. Kato Kung Lee Sr. and Shogun and Cesar Dantes, King Haku and Pierroth Jr. and Rayo de Jalisco Jr. B. The Infernales, CMLL Title Tournament Group D First Round, Morgan B. Massacre. November 8th, El Toreo in Naucalpan, UWA, Rocky Santana and Ray Richard and Sagrado B. Tito Ray and El Engendro and Loco Zandokan, Double Mask or Hair Loss Tournament, Losers Advance, Villanos Iron 3B Silver King and El Texano, Tori Infernal and Scorpio Jr. B. Connect and The Killer, The King and Transformer B. El Colosso and Celestial, Shu El Guerrero and Dr. Wagner Jr. B. Crazy Stars 1 and 2, Connect and Killer B. Silver King and Texano, Colosso and Celestial B. Crazy Stars 1 and 2, Tournament Finals, Silver King and Texano B. Crazy Stars 1 and 2, Unmasked as Adrian Perez and Jose Teles, UWA Tag Title, Villanos 4 and 5 B. Can-Am Express to win belts. November 8th, KA, PR, WWC, Sasha and Cyclone Salvadorino B. La Tigresa and Solid Gold 16 Carat, El Vigilante B. Victor Jovica, Ricky Santana B. Muhammad Hussein, Lou Fabiano, WWC Tag Titles. Rex King and Ray Gonzalez DDQ German Stormtroopers. Caribbean title, Miguelito Perez B Iron Sheik. Invader No. 1 DDQ Equalizer. Bill Denon Huser, Carlitos B Abdullah the Butcher. November 8th Waynesville, North Carolina Siwa, 240. Jimmy Bryant B Dr. X. Bob Baker B Executioner No. 1. Cherokee Renegade DJ Eagle. TJ Maverick B Randy Sledge. KC Thunder B Vladimir Koloff. Georgia Bulldog and Eagle and Renegade DDQ Terminators and Maverick. Street Fight. Jimmy Valiant B Ivan Koloff. November 9th Fridley, Minnesota. PWA, 300 Tony DiNucci B Punisher. Ed Hader B Tommy Ferreira, Charlie Norris and Steve Berg B Red Tyler and Billy Blaze. Masa Saito and Brad Rheingans B Lightning Kid and Jerry Lynn. Road Warrior Hawk and Kensuke Sasaki B Mr. Dynamic and Randy Gusto. November 9th Memphis, USWA, 800 Mike Miller B Tony Falk. Jeff Gaylord B Bart Sawyer, Southern Title. Brian Christopher B Tony Williams. Jeff Jarrett B Mike Samples, American Eagles. Bill Dundee and Danny Davis. B Gaylord and Christopher, USWA title / Downtown Bruno Ref. Jerry Lawler B Todd Champion, USWA Tag Title Cage Match, Moondogs DDQ Eddie and Doug Gilbert. November 10th Louisville, USWA, Jeff Gaylord B Bart Sawyer, Ricky Morton B Mike Miller, Jeff Jarrett B Mike Samples. Loser leaves town for Southern Title, Brian Christopher B Bill Dundee, USWA Tag Title, Moondogs DDQ Eddie and Doug Gilbert, USWA title / Jeff Jarrett Ref. Jerry Lawler B Todd Champion to win title. November 10th Hiratsu, New Japan, 2650, Tasmaniac B Koji Kanemoto, Tatsutoshi Goto and Norio Onaga B Satoshi Kojima and Black Cat, Hiroshi Hazi and Takayuki Izukabe, Hiro Saito and Super Strong Machine, Jushin Liger and El Samurai B Dean Malenko and Pegasus Kid, Kengo Kimura and Shiro Koshinaka and Masashi Aoyagi B Akira Nagami and Osamu Kido and Masachono, Shinya Hashimoto B TNT, Keiji Muto and Riki Chashu and Tatsumi Fujinami B Scott Norton and Tony Halme and Ron Powers. November 10th Morioka, Wings, 2714 Sellout, Ryo Mae D Winger, Jimmy Backlund B Shoji Nakamaki, Lucifer, Steve Collins, B Gypsy Joe, Leatherface, Mike Kirchner, and Duke B Crush the Terminator and Jason the Terrible, Roberto Rodriguez, Falls Count Anywhere, Backlund B Kevin Sullivan, Barbed Wire Deathmatch Mr. Pogo and Mitsuhiro Matsunaga B Headhunters. November 10th Gainesville, Georgia WCW Worldwide Taping, 1900, Non-Squash Results, Arm Wrestling, Van Hammer B Vinny Vegas, Eric Watts B Mongol Warrior, Benjamin Franklin Jack Peacock aka Giant Kimala 2, Shanghai Pierce and Tex Slashinger B Brad Armstrong and Marcus Bagwell, Rick Rude B Kensuke Sasaki 3 stars, Johnny B Bad B Diamond Dallas Page, Arm Wrestling, Blake Van Vader B Nikita Koloff, Brad Armstrong B Scotty Flamingo DQ, Sting B Barbarian, WCW and NWA Tag Title, Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham B Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton 3 1/2 stars. Arm Wrestling Ron Simmons B Barbarian, Rude B Eric Watts. November 10th Williams, Arizona, AWF, GQ Gregory, Greg Regalado B Walking Weapon, Ben Peller, Navajo Kid Steve Eastless, B Liberty Valiance, Steve Vega DQ Primetime Peterson, Jason Peters, B Electric Youth, Steve Gatorwolf B El Toro Bravo, Edgar Arce, Youth and Gatorwolf and Navajo Kid B Peterson and Gregory N. Bravo. November 11th Atlanta Center Stage, WCW Saturday Night Taping, 750/all freebies, Non-Squash Results, Rick Steamboat and Shane Douglas B Vinny Vegas and Diamond Dallas Page, Ian Weston B John Peterson, Brian Pillman Freedom Fighter, Brad Armstrong, Scotty Flamingo B Marcus Bagwell, Kensuke Sasaki B Bobby Eaton DQ, King of Cable Tournament, Big Van Vader B Tony Atlas, Dustin Rhodes B Barbarian. November 11th Narita, New Japan 1610, Tasmaniac and Dean Malenko B Kantaro Hoshino and Osamu Kido, Hiro Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto and Norio Onaga B Jushin Liger and El Samurai and Black Cat, Super Strong Machine B Masanobu Kurisu, Akira Nagami and Riki Chashu and Tatsumi Fujinami B Akatoshi Saito and Kengo Kimura and Shiro Koshinaka, Keiji Muto and Takayuki Izukabe TNT and Pegasus Kid, Scott Norton and Tony Halme and Ron Powers B Riki Chashu and Shinya Hashimoto and Hiroshi Hazi. November 12th Beaver Dam, Kentucky, Kentucky Pro, Danny Hayes B Taz, Fireman B Chicago Butcher DQ, Mike Powers B Jerry Lee, Fireman and Hayes B D and D Express, Bill Lewis B Mitch Ryder. November 12th Tsushima, JWP, 1258. Prelim results unavailable. Plum Mariko b Sumiko Saito, Cutie Suzuki b Akutsu, Devil Masami and Mayumi Ozaki b Dynamite Kansai and Hikari Fukuoka. November 12 Kamehaka All Japan Women, 1650. Prelim results unavailable. Asia Kong b Suzuka Minami, Bull Nakano and Yumiko Hara b Minami Toyota and Takako Inoue. November 12 Second Mesa Arizona, AWF, 400, GQ Gregory b Walking Weapon, Navajo Kid b Liberty Valiance, Primetime Peterson b Electric Youth, Steve Gatorwolf b El Toro Bravo, Youth and Gatorwolf and Kid b Peterson and Gregory and Bravo. November 12 Chiba, New Japan, 1690 Dean Malenko b Koji Kanemoto, Jushin Liger and El Samurai b Tasmaniac and Pegasus Kid, Masashi Aoyagi and Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura and Akatoshi Saito be Super Strong Machine and Hiro Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto and Norio Onaga, Hiroshi Hazi and Akira Nagami be Masa Chono and Osamu Kido, Tatsumi Fujinami and Shinya Hashimoto be Tony Halme and Masanobu Kurisu, Scott Norton and Ron Powers and TNT be Keiji Muto and Riki Chashu and Takayuki Izuka. November 13 Staten Island, New York, UWS, 425, Giant Tiger Cat 1 Battle Royal, Chris Michaels b Skull Von Cruss, Butch Cassidy b Little Ninja, Metal Maniac b Bulldog Max, Brooklyn Blaster b Kodiak Bear, Duke the Pitbull b Boss Hog Calhoun, Jimmy Snuka and Giant Tiger Cat b Greg Valentine and Don Morocco. November 13 Sacramento WWF, 4600, Skinner b Louis Spicoli, Lance Cassidy b Terry Taylor, Head Shrinkers b High Energy, Undertaker b Nails, 30, Crush b Berserker, IC title, Tatanka b Shawn Michaels Core, WWF title, Bret Hart b Rick Martel. November 13 Jacksonville WCW, 2404, Eric Watts b Diamond Dallas Page 1 1/4 stars, Tony Atlas b John Peterson 1 star, Van Hammer b Vinny Vegas 1/2 of 1 star, Rick Steamboat and Shane Douglas b Brian Pillman and Steve Austin 4 stars. US title, Rick Rude b Kensuke Sasaki DQ 2 stars 25 minutes, Falls Count Anywhere, Sting b Cactus Jack 4.5 stars, WCW title, Ron Simmons b Barbarian Dud. November 13 Osaka Rings, 6350 sellout, Naruse b Yamamoto, Armin Renting b Nubuaki Kakuta, Willie Williams b Koen Takinen, Mega Battle Tournament quarterfinals, Renting by, due to injury to Masaki Sadake Dirk Leon Fry b Hans Nyman, 6th round, Chris Dolman b Andrei Kovalev, Akira Maeda b Dmitry Pedikov. November 13 Toyota New Japan, 3930 sellout, Satoshi Kojima and Hiroyoshi Yamamoto b Yuji Nagata and Tsunemitsu Ishizawa, Koji Kanemoto b Shinjiro Otani, Tasmaniac b Black Cat, Jushin Liger and El Samurai b Dean Malenko and Pegasus Kid, Keiji Muto and Osamu Kido b Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka, Tatsumi Fujinami and Masa Chono and Shinya Hashimoto b TNT and Ron Powers and Scott Norton, Riki Chashu and Hiroshi Hazi b Masanobu Kurisu and Tony Halme Super Strong Machine, and Hiro Saito and Norio Onaga and Tatsutoshi Goto b Akatoshi Saito and Masashi Aoyagi and Shiro Koshinaka, and Kengo Kimura 2144. November 13 Tampico, AAA, The Monster Ripper, and La Briosa and Neftali b Lola Gonzalez and La Rosa and Vicky Carranza Octagon and Super Astro and Rey Mysterio Jr. b Fuerza Guerrera and Psicosis and El Hijo del Diablo 2 stars, Blue Panther and Angel Blanco Jr. and La Parca b Love Machine and Lizmark and El Hijo de Lizmark 1 star, Conan El Barbaro and Pero Aguayo and Cien Caras b Chavo Guerrero and El Psicodelico and Chacho Herides 40 minutes dud. November 13 Arena Mexico in Mexico City, EMLL, CMLL World Heavyweight Title Tournament Group D First Round, Canadian Vampire Casanova b El Egipcio 1 3/4 stars, Group D Finals, Vampire b Pirata Morgan DQ 2 3/4 stars, Final 4 Semifinals, Rayo de Jalisco Jr. b King Haku 3/4 of a star, Black Magic b Vampire 2 1/4 stars, MS1 and El Supremo and Negro Casas b Massacre and Cajos I and Jacques Made 2 1/4 stars, La Fiera and El Satanico and Emilio Charles Jr. b Dandy and Atlantis and Pierroth Jr. DQ 2.5 stars. November 13 Winston, West Virginia, PWF, 75, Star Rider b Russian Assassin, George South b Scotty McKeever, Flaming Youth b Austin Steele, Italian Stallion b Cruel Connection No. 2, South 1 Bunkhouse Battle Royal. November 13 Winter Haven, Florida, CFWF Al Hardiman Promoter 234, John Force b Johnny Provros, Randy Hogan and Chris Nelson b Motor City Bad Boys, Cuban Assassin DDQ Caribbean Kid Berto, Al Hardiman b. Buddy Valentine, Cody Wade b. Big V, Lou Perez d. Force. November 13th, Dallas Sportatorium, GWF, 650/papered, Mike Dahl b. GQ Knight, Manny Villalobos b. Kit Carson, Bobby Duncombe Jr. b. Johnny Mantel DQ, Booker T b. Maniac Mike Core, Killer Tim Brooks b. The Nuke, Jeff Gretner, Bobby Monroe d. Calvin Knapp, Black Bart b. Big John Hawk, Ebony Experience b. Beach Dudes, Alex Porto and Sean Summers, Maniac Mike and Monroe b. Tribal Nation Core, Steve Simpson b. John Tatum DQ. November 13th, Yabuko, PR, WWC, German Stormtroopers b. Cyclone Salvadorino and La Ley, Sasha b. La Tigresa, Victor Jovica b. El Vigilante DQ, Carl Styles b. Muhammad Hussein, WWC Tag Title, Rex King and Ray Gonzalez b. Solid Gold, Invader No. 1 b. Equalizer, Non-Title Match, Carlitos b. Dick Murdoch. November 13th, Lafayette, Tennessee, WCW, 600, Marcus Bagwell d. Shanghai Pierce, Johnny Gunn b. Tex Slashinger, Tom Zenk b. Larry Zabishko, Brad Armstrong b. Michael Hayes, Johnny b. Bad b. Scotty Flamingo, NWA and WCW Tag Titles, Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham b. Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton. November 13th, Harlan, Kentucky, SMW 400, Night Stalker b. Robbie Eagle, Tracy Smothers b. Killer Kyle, SMW titled, Tim Horner b. Dirty White Boy DQ, Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden b. Smothers and Dixie Dynamite, Scott Armstrong, Hospital Elimination Match for SMW Tag Title, Rock and Roll Express b. Heavenly Bodies to win titles. November 13th, Cloverdale, BC, WCCW, Jason the Invincible b. Randy Taylor, The Frog b. Samoan Hitman, Black Ninja b. Ole Olson, Loser Gets Head Shaved, Timothy Flowers and Wonderful Wendy b. Johnny Flash and Buddy Wayne, Flash Got Head Shaved, Michelle Starr, Mark Velios, and Buddy Rose DDQ Mighty Quinn and Firefighter Adrian. November 14th, Omiya, All Japan, Mighty Inoue b. Amori, Satoru Asako b. Ryuma Izumida, Andre the Giant and Mitsuo Momoto and Rusher Kimura b. Haruka Eigen and Motoshi Okuma and Masa Fuchi, Real World League Tournament Matches, Giant Baba and Kenta Kobashi b. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Steve Williams and Terry Gordy b. Danny Spivey and Kendall Windham, Akira Tao and Jun Akiyama b. Dory Funk and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace b. Dan Crawford and Doug Furness, Mitsuharu Masawa and Toshiaki Kauta b. Joel Deaton and Billy Black. November 14th, Central City, Kentucky, Kentucky Pro, Wolfman b. Waldo, JC Ice Baby, Jamie Dundee, B. American Dream, Roy Mantell and Plowboy Williams b. D&D Express DQ, Danny Hayes b. Mad Dog DQ, Ninja Turtle b. Mike Powers DQ, Bill Lewis b. Chad Starr. November 14th, Wayne, New Jersey, WWA 350, Jimmy Shoulders b. Kodiak Bear, Ed the Razor b. Gus the Greek Terror, Tommy Cairo b. Damian Stone 3¼ stars, Ray Odyssey b. The Muller 1 star, Spider and Cheetah Kid and Al the Sledgehammer b. Chris Evans and Tank and Boy Gone Bad Dud, Chris Candido b. Sabu DQ 3½ stars, Old Style Texas Deathmatch, Harry Funk b. Eddie Gilbert when Gilbert failed to answer bell for 12th Fall 2658 5 stars. November 14th, Los Angeles Sports Arena, WWF, 3865, Thinner b. Louis Spicoli, Crush b. Berserker, Undertaker b. Nails, 40, IC title, Tatanka b. Shawn Michaels Core, Lance Cassidy b. Terry Taylor, Head Shrinkers b. High Energy WWF title, Bret Hart b. Rick Martel. November 14th, Cal State Los Angeles Gym, WWA/EMLL, 550, Mixteco and Xander b. Big Man and Scarface 1 star, Buri Chavez and Muriela Del Ring b. Cyclone 1 and 2 1 star, Los Brazos b. Tornado Negro I and Chamaco Rebelde and Crazy Boy 3½ stars, Emilio Charles Jr. and MS1 and Cesar Sander Jr. b. Atlantis and Mercurio and Jalisco I 3 stars, WWA Welterweight title, Loverboy b. Pilato Suicida to win title 3 stars. November 14th, Morristown, Tennessee, SMW 450, Night Stalker b. Robbie Eagle, Robert Fuller b. Dixie Dynamite, Tracy Smothers b. Jimmy Golden, Non-Title Tennessee Street Fight, Tim Horner b. Dirty White Boy, Hospital Elimination Match for SMW Tag Title, Rock and Roll Express b. Heavenly Bodies. November 14th, Gilbert, West Virginia, PWF 150, Scotty McKeever b. Black Scorpion, Italian Stallion b. Russian Assassin, Cruel Connection No. 2 b. Star Rider, George South b. Flaming Youth, Stallion 1 Bunkhouse Battle Royal. November 14th, Chatsworth, Georgia, MWF, David Young b. Crazy Frank, New Centurion b. Woody Woodchuck, Greg Sawyer b. Larry Santana, Party Boys b. Hurricane Willie and Jimmy Sharp, Party Boys and Stallion and Santana and Woodchuck b. Russian Nightmare and Centurion and Frank and Willie and Sharp. November 14th, St. Petersburg, WCW, 997, Van Hammer and Eric Watts b. Diamond Dallas Page and Vinny Vegas, Tony Atlas b. John Peterson, Steve Austin d. Rick Steamboat, Shane Douglas b. Brian Pillman, U.S. title, Rick Rude b. Kensuke Sasaki DQ, WCW title, Ron Simmons b. Barbarian, Falls Count Anywhere, Sting b. Cactus Jack. November 14th, Portland, USA, Mike Winter b. Al Madrill, John Rambo b. Jim Pope, Billy Two Eagles b. Buddy Wayne, Ron and Don Harris b. Max Steele and C.W. Bergstrom. November 14th, Farmingville, New York, UWS 750, Chris Michaels Kerr Demolition Blast, Italian Stallion, Not Gary Cortenethly, and SD Jones b. Mr. X and Chris Duffy, Bulldog Mac b. Boss Hog Calhoun DQ, Butch Cassidy b. Little Ninja, Metal Maniac b. Gino Caruso, Giant Tiger Cat b. Greg Valentine DQ, Jimmy Snuka b. Don Morocco. November 14th, Gaithersburg, MD MEWF, Axel Rotten b. AJ Fritzoid, Destroyer b. Mark Osborne, Ricky Blues and Nick Tarantino b. Ramblin' Rich and Ricky Lane, Rasta the Voodoo Man DDQ Morgus the Maniac, Jimmy Janetti d. Lightning Kid 20 minutes, Kid asked for 5 minutes and pinned him after time limit expired. Janetti kept MUF LTHWT title, Street Fight Lumberjack Strap Match, Bob Starr b. Lucifer, AC Golden b. Agent Orange, Max Thrasher b. Ivan Koloff, Fritzoid 1 Bunkhouse Battle Royal. November 15th, Ottawa, All Japan, 1900 Sellout, Mitsuo Momoto b. Amori, Mighty Inoue b. Masao Inoue, Giant Baba and Andre the Giant and Rusher Kimura b. Motoshi Okuma and Haruka Eigen and Ryuma Izumida, Tag Team Tournament matches, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness b. Dan Spivey and Kendall Windham, The Patriot Del Wilkes and The Eagle, Jackie Fulton, b. Dory Funk and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Terry Gordy and Steve Williams b. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace b. Joel Deaton and Billy Black, Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada and Kena Kobashi b. Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi and Jun Akiyama. Kawada beat Fuchi with Stretch Plum 23-21. November 15th, Oakland Coliseum Arena, WWF, 2400, Skinner b. Louis Spicoli Dud, Crush b. Berserker Dud, Lance Cassidy b. Terry Taylor 1/2 of 1 star, Head Shrinkers b. High Energy 1 1/2 star, IC title, Tatanka b. Shawn Michaels Core 2.5 stars, Undertaker b. Nails 30 Dud, WWF title, Bret Hart b. Rick Martel 2 stars. November 15th, Dallas, Big D 48, Animal b. Ray Evans DQ, John Tatum b. Angel of Death, Dave Sheldon, Iceman King Parsons b. Scott Braddock DQ, Action Jackson and Terry Sims DDQ, Awesome Kong and King Kong, Bill Irwin b. Gary Young. November 15th, Dundalk, MD, WIN, Spider 1 Bunkhouse Battle Royal, Zach Blades b. Bulldozer Benton, Ivan Koloff b. Lucifer, Cream Team, Rip Sawyer and Dave Casanova, b. Nick Tarantino and Morgus the Maniac, Tommy Rose and Johnny Rotten b. Chris Candido and Chris Evans, Lightning Kid Kerr Ricky Blues, Cream Team b. Rose and Johnny Rotten, AC Golden and Nikolai Volkov b. Don Morocco and Axel Rotten, Cream Team b. Lord of Darkness Pain and Spider to win tag titles. November 15th, Miyagi, New Japan, 5000 Sellout, Osamu Nishimura and Koji Kanemoto b. Satoshi Kojima and Hiroyoshi Yamamoto, Masanobu Kurisu and Ron Powers b. Black Cat and Osamu Kido, El Samurai b. Dean Malenko, Jushin Liger b. Tasmaniac, Shinya Hashimoto and Masa Chono b. Takayuki Izuka and Akira Nagami, Tatsumi Fujinami and Riki Chashu and Hiroshi Hazi b. Scott Norton and Pegasus Kid and Tony Halme, Keiji Muto b. TNT, Akatoshi Saito and Masashi Aoyagi and Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura b. Super Strong Machine and Hiro Saito and Norio Onaga and Tatsutoshi Goto 2104. November 15th, Humacao, PR, WWC, Cyclone Salvadorino b. The Fly, Rex King and Ray Gonzalez b. El Vigilante and El Exotico, Solid Gold 16-karat DDQ Stormtrooper Hans, Solid Gold 24-karat Stormtrooper Helmet Hessler, Carl Styles Kerr Equalizer, Carlitos Colon and Invader No. 1 b. Muhammad Hussein and Dick Murdoch. November 15th, Toronto, WWF, Max Moon b. Brooklyn Brawler, Bob Backlund b. Papa Shango, Damian Demento b. Tito Santana, Razor Ramon b. Randy Savage Core, Big Boss Man b. Kimala Virgil b. Repo Man WWF Tag Title, Money Incorporated b. Natural Disasters. November 15th, Louisville, USWA, Mike Miller Kerr Bart Sawyer, Jeff Gaylord b. Curtis Thompson, Eddie Marlin b. Mike Samples DQ, Southern Title, Ricky Morton b. Brian Christopher DQ, American Eagles b. Gaylord and Christopher, Cage Match for USWA Tag Title, Moondogs b. Eddie and Doug Gilbert DQ. November 15th, Indianapolis, Midwestern Wrestling Alliance, Flash Flanagan be the Sheik, not Ed Farhat, PC Austin be Johnny Walker, not Wrestling 2 Cousin Bubba and Buford Storm be Doug Roberts and El Diablo, Dream Warriors be Dallas Maverick and TJ Powers, Calypso Jim be Corporal Punishment, Powers be Calypso Jim, Mountaineer be Buddy Garvin, Bubba and Jim and Mountaineer split Battle Royal. November 15th, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, JWP, 2010 Sellout, Devil Masami be Akutsu, Dynamite Kansai be Heki, Plum Mariko be Seishiyama, Mayumi Ozaki and Hikari Fukuoka be Cutie Suzuki and Sumiko Saito 2344. November 16th, Atlanta Center Stage and WCW Saturday Night Taping, 750/ all freebies, non-squash results, Marcus Bagwell and Brad Armstrong be Terminators, Mark Laurinaitis and Al Green, Sting and Van Hammer be Rick Rude and Cactus Jack DQ, King of Cable semifinals. Big Van Vader be Dustin Rhodes, Hammer be Jack, Eric Watts and Kensuke Sasaki be Arnold Anderson and Steve Austin, Paul Orndorff be Ron Simmons Core. Special thanks to Scott Hudson, Steve Prozik, Steve Dr. Shiny Nomaki Sims, Gary Langevin, Ken Verrett, Dan Paris, Charles Warburton, Ron Lemieux, Scott Walton, Jennifer Daub, Ron Lemieux, Dan Riley, John Clark, Dan Farron, Freddie Fargo, Mad Jack, Paul Adamovic, David Hanna, Jeff Cohen, Brian Hildebrand. AAA. CN Cara's first official match as a babyface headlined the November 13th television tapings from Tampico as he teamed with Conan El Barbaro and Pero Arguello to face Chavo Guerrero and El Psicodelico and the returning Chacho Herediz. Keep in mind that Conan has already challenged Caras to a loser must retire match that will probably be held in February and that Arguello's face turn came specifically because he was backstabbed several months back by Caras. The match was said to have been pretty bad, which isn't surprising considering everyone but Conan is well past their prime and there isn't much anyone can do working with Psicodelico. Anyway, during the second fall the three heels were triple teaming Caras and had him in a submission and Arguello went in to break it up but Conan kept him from doing on 4 different occasions until finally Caras submitted, losing the fall. During the third fall, Caras continued to get destroyed until he made the hot tag to Conan who quickly pinned Herediz. Caras was still stunned from the beating, and after the match Conan attacked him and left him laying and Conan and Arguello left the ring. At this point, all three heels attacked Caras as well until his brother, Mascara Año 2000 made the save. The only other major angle came during the semifinal where La Parka once again pinned Lizmark to win both the second and third falls during a trios match which sets up Lizmark defending his Mexican light heavyweight belt against Parka this coming Friday. After the match was over, Blue Panther left Love Machine, Art Bar, laying with an illegal piledriver so they're building toward a mask versus hair match. In title matches this week, Volador and Misterioso had a Mexican tag team title defense against Parka and Hijo del Espectro on November 14th in Tapachula and November 15th. In Tuxtla Gutierrez had Panther defend the Mexican middleweight title against former champ Octagon. November 15th in Xochitl had Heavy Metal versus Barba Negra in a hair versus hair match. On Thursday, the National Arbitration Board was to hear the AAA versus SNL Union case in regard to the SNL Union boycotting and causing cancellation of this group's weekly shows in 6 smaller Mexico City arenas promoted by former wrestler Raul Reyes, who some of you may remember as a California headliner in the mid-1970s for both Mike LaBelle and Roy Shire. A surprise ending to this scenario as when the meeting was over, Reyes agreed to only use wrestlers and referees affiliated with the SNL Union. In other words, he switched his arenas from being AAA arenas back to EMLL. This group is scheduled for its first major Mexico City card at a 10,000-seat arena this coming Friday, headlining by the feuds pushed this past Friday, but with the arbitration board ruling and because of the strength of unions in Mexico City, nothing appears to be definite now. EMLL. The CMLL World Heavyweight Title Tournament will come down to Black Magic, Norman Smiley from Florida, versus Rayo de Jalisco Jr. The title was originally to have been decided this past Friday night at Arena Mexico. However, because of the slight injury to Canadian Vampire Casanova, matches involving him scheduled for November 8th were postponed until November 13th, the originally scheduled date for the Final Four. So during the week the promotion made the announcement they'd continue the tournament on November 13th up until the finals, which would be moved to November 20th. On November 13th, Vampire first pinned El Egipcio in the match postponed from the previous week, setting up Vampire vs. Pirata Morgan for the Group D entrant into the Final Four. Morgan pulled heel ref El Gato Montini in front of him as Vampire came off the top and Vampire crashed into him. Morgan then put Vampire in a submission and Montini rang the bell, but surprised everyone by raising Vampire's hand with a DQ win. Jalisco and King Haku were the winners of Group A and B, while Magic won Group C on November 7th in Mexico City. In the semifinals, Jalisco pinned Haku and Magic pinned Vampire, who they portrayed as exhausted and badly beaten from his 2 previous matches. The November 14th show in Los Angeles drew just 550 using Los Brazos, Atlantis, Mississippi 1 and Emilio Charles Jr., subbing for La Fiera, besides the locals. This had everyone scratching their heads since the previous cards with Cmll guys have done so much better. My guess is it's a combination of running shows bi-weekly, which is too often considering in particular the high ticket prices and the lack of a real drawing card. Obviously Vampire fit the bill because the 2 shows he was on drew houses in excess of $50,000, but Los Brazos and Atlantis didn't. They're returning November 29th with Blue Demon Jr., Pierroth Jr., Leo del Solitario, and Los Villanos 1 and 4 and V. Judging from the names, that probably won't draw well either, although it is during one of the 2 easiest weekends of the year to draw. Esther Moreno was scheduled to return from an injured ankle in the opener, teaming with Kaoru Maeda against Debbie Malenko and Saki Hasegawa. Humberto Garza, who formed a major tag team in the 60s with Ruben Juarez, who also was a Los Angeles headliner in the early 70s as the Giant Killer feuding with Ernie Ladd, introduced his 2 sons who have just debuted in the past 2 months as Humberto Garza Jr. and Humberto Solano Segura. The 2 will form a trio with Ruben Juarez Jr., who also debuted in early September. UWA Villanos 4 and 5 won the UWA tag titles from the Can-Am Express on November 8th at El Toreo in Naucalpan, which was expected with the Can-Ams leaving for the Japan Tag Tourney a few days later. That same card saw a one-night losers advance tournament in which both members of the losing team would lose either hair or mask. It came down to Silver King and El Texano, who lost first to Villanos Uno and Tres and then to Connect and the Killer, against the Crazy Stars, who lost first to Shu El Guerrero and Dr. Wagner Jr. and then to El Colosso and Celestial. The Crazy Stars lost, although one had his foot under the ropes during the fall, but they were unamped to reveal Adrian Perez and Jose Tellez, both of whom were born in Mexico but raised and live in El Paso, Texas. The biggest angle coming out of the show was during a first-round match when Tori Infernal, Joe Unmasked from Rochester, New York, and Scorpio Jr. beat Connect and Killer when Infernal destroyed Connect and pinned him with a big splash. Afterwards Connect issued a challenge for a mask versus mask match on November 15th. Most of the major house shows during the week were tag matches with Connect on one side and Infernal on the other, with Connect working as a face this week, teaming with the likes of Dos Caras and Villano 3 mainly. Cassandro beat Lasser to win the UWA lightweight title on October 29th in Toluca. El Boricua and Ricky Santana and Miguelito Perez returned as a trio on November 15th to face Cars and Villano 3 and Enrique Vera. All Japan. Main news is the tag tourney. TV on November 8th drew a 3.8 rating, highlighted by a repeat showing of the Misawa Kawada match from Budokan Hall. This past Sunday's television aired opening night of the tag tourney. New Japan. This week's house shows have been headlined by the new feud between heel quartets the Skinheads, Masashi Aoyagi and Kengo Kimura, and Shiro Koshinaka and Akatoshi Saito, against the Raging Staff, Super Strong Machine and Hiro Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto and Norio Oniga. It started on November 11th in Narita when the Skinheads dropped a 6-man to Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and Akira Nagami, and after the match the Raging Staff jumped them. They worked mid-card the next night in Chiba with the Skinheads winning, but the Raging Staff evened the odds on November 13th on Toyota in a main event match with liberal use of juice and gimmicks including beer bottles and chair shots when Machine pinned Akatoshi Saito with a diving headbutt in 21:44. November 14th was an off night for the group, so it came down to November 15th in Miyagi with a main event match where the winning team would get to face the War Trio, Genichiro Tenryu and Tatsumi Kitahara and Takashi Ishikawa on November 23rd at Tokyo Sumo Hall, and the Skinheads came out on top when Kimura pinned Goto in 21:04. Ron Powers and the Tasmaniac debuted on this tour with much publicity, but both have already done jobs the first weekend. Powers actually lost the first night teaming with Scott Norton and Tony Halme against Choshu and Fujinami and Keiji Muto to Muto's moonsault. Tasmaniac was put over his first 3 shows before losing to Jushin Liger on November 15th. Here's how the November 22nd and November 23rd Sumo Hall cards which end this tour are listed. November 22nd has Great Muta vs. Sting for the IWGP title, Steiners vs. Norton and Halme for the IWGP Tag Team titles, El Samurai vs. Ultimo Dragon from War/EMLL for the IWGP Junior title, Skinheads vs. Choshu and Fujinami and Hiroshi Hazi and Nagami, Shinya Hashimoto vs. Powers and Liger vs. Dean Malenko. November 23rd has Masachono vs. Scott Steiner for the NWA title, Choshu and Hazi vs. New Road Warriors, Hawk and Sasaki, Skinheads vs. War Trio and Fujinami, and Muto vs. Nagami and Hashimoto, plus other matches to be announced dependent upon the results from the first night. Weekly Pro Wrestling ran a story in this week's issue relating to the negotiations with UWFI, saying that New Japan asked UWFI to pay $240,000 to them in advance, do a battle royal on New Year's Eve in Ganryujima with Choshu, Masa Saito, a New Japan mystery man, Takada, Yamazaki, and a UWFI mystery partner, and that the winner of the battle royal would face Chono at the January 4th Tokyo Egg Dome show. I believe that was the story the UWFI claimed in interviews a few days after the meeting last week. The November 7th television show drew an 8.2 rating, airing the tag team tournament finals. Other Japan notes. The quarterfinals of the Rings Mega Battle Tournament took place on November 13th in Osaka before a sellout 6,350 fans. See results, leading to a December 19th date at the Ariake Coliseum for the semifinals with Akira Maeda vs. Chris Dolman and Dirk Leon Fry vs. Herman Renting, which seems to indicate a Maeda-Fry final match on January 23rd at Tokyo Bay NK Hall. Lots of the tournament luster was taken away when Masaaki Sadake broke his leg, since the bracketing seemed to be built toward a Sadake vs. Maeda championship match, which would be a huge draw since Sadake is the only major rings performer yet to put anyone over. In Osaka, the most interesting match was Fry vs. stablemate Hans Niemann. They went 5 3-minute rounds to a draw, and since one had to advance, they did a sudden death period with Fry winning midway through the 6th round. JWP will crown its first champion on December 1st at Tokyo Ota Ward Gym. Devil Masami vs. Dynamite Kansai will meet in a playoff match, with the winner facing Cutie Suzuki, who finished first in the round-robin tournament, for the title. If you've ever seen these women, the idea of either Masami or Kansai vs. Suzuki is a ridiculous mismatch, both in terms of size and talent. Final tournament standings had Suzuki 6-1-1, Masami 5-1-2, Kansai 5-1-2, Mayumi Ozaki 5-2-1, Hikari Fukuoka 4-2-2, Plum Marco 3-5, Warshoi Kid 2-6, and some of the younger girls with Zip on the scoreboard. All Japan women Takako Inoue and Yumiko Hara face Mayumi Ozaki and Hikari Fukuoka on the same card. These inter-promotion matches appear to be leading toward a major tournament next April at the Yokohama Arena, with All Japan Women, JWP and LLPW wrestlers all entered as part of the All Japan Women 25th anniversary card. Guerrero del Futuro Jose Luis Feliciano and Espectro de Ultra Tumba start with War on November 26th. UWFI on November 25th in Nagoya has Nobuhiko Takada and Kazuo Yamazaki vs. Gary Albright and Mark Fleming, Yoji Enjo vs. Masato Kakihara, Dan Severn vs. Yuko Miyato, Yoshihiro Takayama and Hiromitsu Kanehara vs. Mark Silver and Gene Ligon and David Cummings debuts. December 20th at Tokyo Sumo Hall officially announced is Takada vs. Dennis Kozlowski, Albright vs. Yamazaki, and Bad News Allen vs. Kakihara. Atsushi Onita announced his partner for the FMW Tag Tourney, which starts next week, will be Grigory Varichev. Psycho's number 1 and number 2 in that tournament will be Billy Anderson and Tim Patterson from Southern California. Onita, a few weeks back, after Shoji Nakamaki quit, made a public challenge in the gym for Nakagawa for a barbed wire match. When Nakamaki didn't show up, Samba Asako replaced him and Onita won the one-match bloodbath show in front of the press and no fans. The old empty arena gimmick. I wonder where he got that idea from? Nakamaki debuted with Wings on the November 10th show, losing quickly to Jimmy Backlund, his trainer, in an exhibition, with the storyline being that after Nakamaki's poor performance in the exhibition, Wings won't hire him, so they're trying the ultimate underdog angle with him. On the same show, Backlund faced Kevin Sullivan in a Falls Count Anywhere match, which saw them carry the match outside of the building and also up into the second deck. Universal, which was said to have been going out of business, announced a January tour from January 22nd to January 28th. November tour starts November 19th with Los Brazos vs. Robin Hood and Super Brasso and Brasso de Platino, all 6 of whom are brothers, Gran Hamada and Great Sasuke, and Kendo vs. Pat Tanaka and Bulldog KT and Villano 4. November 20th has Robin Hood and Brasso de Platino and Kato Kung Lee 2, Kendo with a new mask, versus Los Brazos, Intercontinental Tag title with Tanaka and KT defending against Hamada and Sasuke, and UWF Super Welterweight title with Super Dolphin versus El Colosso. November 21st has Robin Hood and Kato Kung Lee 2 and Sasuke versus Los Brazos, UWF Super Middleweight title with Villano 4 defending against Hamada. November 22nd has Kendo and Sasuke and Hamada versus Los Brazos. November 23rd has a Battle Royal, Los Brazos vs Super Brasso and Brasso de Platino and Kato Kung Lee Jr. and Dolphin vs Robin Hood for the Super Welterweight belt. November 24th has a 10-man elimination tag match with Los Brazos and Brasso de Platino and Super Brasso vs Robin Hood and Hamada and Sasuke, Kendo and Dolphin. November 25th has Los Brazos vs Kendo and Hamada and Robin Hood, and November 27th has Sasuke and Hamada and Kendo vs Villano 4 and Dolphin and KT, El Colosso and the King and Robin Hood vs Los Brazos. Japanese television rundown. November 1st All Japan 1. Toshiaki Kawada made Johnny Ace submit to the stretch plum. Ace worked on Kawada's left arm for the early part of the match. As most of Kawada's bouts are, this came off as very realistic. They went back and forth with near falls. Some spots were a little off, but the crowd was into this a lot. 3 1/2 stars. 2. Jumbo Tsuruta and Akira Tao and Yoshinari Ogawa beat Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi in 21-15. Kobashi had a bruise on his left hamstring the size of a basketball, but it didn't seem to affect his work. Typical match quality with these guys. Actually, the match was a tad better than usual and more heated than usual, but that was made up for because the finish was nowhere near as exciting as usual. No near falls. Tao just pinned Kikuchi with a golden arm bomber in a predictable finish. 4 stars. November 7th. New Japan 1. Choshu and Hashimoto beat Fujinami and Manabu Nakanishi in 11:54 in the tag tourney. Nakanishi, who represented Japan in the 1992 Olympics in freestyle at 220, wears an amateur wrestling outfit like Rick Steiner. The match consisted of Choshu and Hashimoto mainly working over the green Nakanishi. He wasn't supposed to debut until the Tokyo Dome but was rushed into the tag tourney as a selling point when Big Van Vader pulled out. Fujinami still does solid work but is lacking charisma at this point. Nakanishi is really green, but has both presence and explosiveness, so he'll eventually make it big. Hashimoto pinned Nakanishi with a power bomb, but after the match the crowd gave Nakanishi a huge ovation. 2.5 stars. 2. Hazi and Sasaki beat Muto and Bigelow to advance to the tag tourney finals in 15:54. Bigelow looked to be pushed up to the 430 range, which is a little too much for him. Bigelow invented a hot new move, starting like a double-arm suplex into a backbreaker over the shoulder and dropped into a shoulder breaker. Match was only so-so until the finish, which was very exciting. A lot of near falls back and forth ending when Sasaki powerslammed Bigelow and Hazi pinned him with a German suplex. 3.25 stars. 3. Choshu and Hashimoto beat Hazi and Sasaki in 15:45 to win the tournament. Stiff good work. Early part saw some mat work combined with even stiffer than usual boots by Hashimoto. Hazi injured his knee during the match, but it wasn't a factor in the match. Very good overall. Finish saw Sasaki go for a powerbomb on Choshu but was kicked in the head from behind by Hashimoto 3 times. After a lariat by Choshu, a DDT by Hashimoto, and 2 more lariats by Choshu, Sasaki was pinned. 3.5 stars. November 8th. All Japan 1. Giant Baba and Tsuruta and Dory Funk beat Steve Williams and Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger. Slinger was in most of the way selling. Williams and Gordy were kind of out of it, while both Tsuruta and Dory worked well with Slinger. Slinger's kicks continued to get better. Finish saw Tsuruta pin Slinger with a back suplex. 2.5 stars. 2. Rebroadcast of Misawa Kawada. USWA. WWF manager Harvey Whippleman is working Memphis as a babyface. It started November 9th with Whippleman, using his old ring name of Downtown Bruno, being Burt Prentice's special referee from the WWF for the Jerry Lawler vs. Todd Champion title match. Bruno crossed up Prentice and Champion by favoring Lawler during the match. Finish saw Lawler leap over the ropes for a sunset flip. Champion held onto the ropes. Bruno kicked Champion's hand off the ropes and fast countered him for the pin. It should be noted that there was no crowd heat at all for the Lawler Champion match. Unless you've seen a tape of these two in the ring, you don't realize what a size difference there is between Lawler and Champion. Champion has him by 8 inches in height and probably 80 pounds, not to mention the 2 obvious visual difference in age and physique. Notice there was no mention about work rate and interview ability. Apparently Champion was booked into Memphis as a heel through the WWF trying to give him experience, but he's already returned home to Atlanta and has been replaced by former tag partner Curtis Thompson. Brian Christopher did an interview saying he knew who the American Eagles were, as did everyone in there, Bill Dundee and Danny Davis, who had lost Loser Leaves Town matches to him, so he's putting up $1,000 against their masks and matches this week. Doug Gilbert wrestled Mike Samples on television, ending when the Moondogs jumped Doug with barbed wire and wrapped him up in the barbed wire, cutting up his chest, back and arms a la Onia. Lawler made the save, and afterwards Gilbert had gashes everywhere when they did their interview. Thompson isn't being called Chip the Firebreaker but is wearing his same WCW costume. Burt Prentice said that Thompson got a Raw deal in Atlanta, and if they had given he and Todd Champion a chance, they'd have won the World Tag Team titles. Actually, Prentice's best line was when he was talking about Downtown Bruno, and he said that there were many wrestlers he could beat, but he could murder Bruno. A correction from last week. This group is still running Evansville every Wednesday, just with a split crew with Jackson. In fact, this past Wednesday's Moondogs vs. Gilberts was another bloodbath brawl all over the building. November 16th in Memphis had Tony Williams vs. Reggie B. Fine, Lauren Davenport and Mike Miller vs. Miss Texas, and Bart Sawyer, Ricky Morton vs. Thompson, Downtown Bruno vs. Prentice, Samples vs. Jarrett, Christopher and Jeff Gaylord vs. Eagles in a mask vs. $1,000 match, and Moondogs and Richard Lee vs. Lawler and Eddie and Doug Gilbert in a barbed wire match. SMW. Rock and Roll Express won the SMW tag title from the Heavenly Bodies on November 13th, in Harlan, Kentucky in a hospital elimination match. The rules are that as soon as someone bleeds, he's eliminated. Robert Gibson bled first, leaving Ricky Morton 2-on-1. However, Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard both bled before he did to allow them to capture the title. They retained the belts on November 14th in Morristown, Tennessee. The idea for the title change is to get the idea in people's minds that the title can change hands anywhere, even without television cameras, and Harlan, Kentucky certainly qualifies as that. Bob Armstrong lifted his lifetime suspension of Kevin Sullivan after a few days, saying that the only way for Sullivan to get the punishment he deserves is for him to stay and have to wrestle. Armstrong then announced he's called up the Mongolian Stomper, 57-year-old Archie Gouldy, to face Sullivan on the Thanksgiving tour. Armstrong, on an interview, claimed that 1 year ago Sullivan wanted to come into Smoky Mountain Wrestling and he wouldn't let him in, and that no promoter in the United States will allow Sullivan to wrestle, which is why he only works overseas. He then said that Sullivan's suspension was lifted from the arenas, but that he's still got a lifetime suspension for television, which will no doubt end as soon as he returns from Japan and is available on a day they shoot television. After Armstrong talked about Stomper, they showed a film clip from the mid-1970s of a bloodbath match between Stomper and Armstrong from the old Gulas promotion. They then aired a taped interview from Sullivan which had paid advertisement written on the screen. Sullivan and his followers were around a campfire with a tombstone with Brian Lee's name written on it and said Lee was only the beginning. Sullivan said the wrestling today in the big federations is nothing but a kiddie show and he doesn't want to be a part of it because he doesn't like kids. Armstrong also gave Paul Orndorff a note saying that his comments on television the previous week about being able to beat Danny Davis and Ron Garvin at the same time denoted a verbal contract and that he was booking a handicap match with them against him. Orndorff said he couldn't remember saying that and that he's just like Bill Clinton in that he just didn't remember what he said before. Television main was Bobby and Jackie Fulton versus Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. After the obligatory ref bump, Dutch Mantell ran in as ref but was going down the line until the finish. As Jackie was on the top rope, Dutch pulled Golden out of the way and Jackie crashed to the mat and Mantell fast counted as Golden pinned him. Next week's TV main is Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette versus Rock and Roll Express and Ron Garvin. Killer Kyle, Mark Kyle, will be out of action for a while after being rear-ended. His car while he was driving. Texas. Kerry Von Erich continues to appear Friday nights at the Sportatorium, but hasn't wrestled yet. This week he did one save when Skander Akbar and Johnny Mantell were beating up on Bobby Duncombe Jr., and they held a surprise party for him. Von Erich was given a trophy, and as you'd expect, out came Mantell, Black Bart, Akbar and Akbar's attorney Gaston B. Means, a local actor, and they destroyed the trophy. Bart actually destroyed the trophy and was suspended for 10 days. Von Erich was for some reason suspended for 5 days because of the brawl, which means a lot since they only run shows every 7 days. Another newcomer getting a push is Bobby Monroe, who has previously worked around Houston as Bubba Monroe, son of Sputnik Monroe. Manny Fernandez is back from Japan but won't be working for Global since too many wrestlers complained about his dressing room behavior while he was in Japan. Ebony Experience and Alex Porto returned from Japan with Porto and Sean Summers working as a tag team called the Beach Dudes. Ebony Experience are still faces even though they are managed by Gary Hart and Sebastian. November 20th show is being billed as Dallas Cowboys Night. According to the promotion, all of the Dallas Cowboys and their families have been invited to the Sportatorium to rock and wrestle. Come on out and meet the Dallas Cowboys. Who is promoting this group, and came up with this idea? Mike Lano. Card has Texas Mustangs, Duncombe and John Hawk, versus Tim Brooks and Mike Lane, Rainbow Brown versus Bobby Monroe, Tribal Nation versus John Tatum and Rod Price, and Manny Villalobos versus Gaston B. Means, with no ref and no pinfalls, with each man being given a baseball bat, and it goes on until one man is left. Big D's tag title was held up after Action Jackson and Terry Sims' defense against Awesome Kong and King Kong ended in a double pin. Main event saw Big D champ Gary Young lose to Bill Irwin in a non-title match. November 22nd has Parsons vs. Mystery Man provided by Baboose, Jackson and Sims vs. Kongs for tag title, and Young vs. Irwin for HWT title. Here and there. Terry Funk and Eddie Gilbert had a classic brawl on November 14th in Wayne, New Jersey, an old-style Texas death match which went 12 falls and 26-48. Both guys and manager Mark Curtis bled, with Gilbert bleeding buckets. They brawled all over the gym. The only bad thing was that only 350 fans attended the show, and because of a 30-minute delay before the card started, there were only 150 to 200 fans left when the match started. It seems like just about every one of them called here over the next 2 days to say it was a 5 stars match and as good as, if not better than, any of the Gilbert vs. Cactus Jack matches from last year, which is pretty heavy praise. Steve Gatorwolf ran 4 shows this past week in Arizona, with the best crowd being 400. Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki students did a pro wrestling demonstration at the Toronto Sky Dome after an Argonauts football game on November 8th, in particular Cowboy Billy Johnson, FMW, and Johnny Destiny. Speaking of wrestling schools, Billy Anderson School in Southern California got a plug in the Los Angeles Times Magazine on November 1st, which led to a second plug on CNN. A Current Affair wanted to do a story on the school as well, but I don't think Anderson was going to cooperate. Anderson wasn't happy with the Times story since it was headlined, "School of Fake Knocks." Major League Baseball umpire Ken Kaiser, who at one time did some pro wrestling, did his annual celebrity charity benefit on November 13th, which always includes some pro wrestlers. Bobby Heenan, who was scheduled to MC the show, had to cancel at the last minute, as in the day before, which we assume would be due to last-minute changes having to be made because of Ultimate Warrior quitting. Jim Neidhart was also listed and didn't appear, however appearing were John Studd, Angel of Death, Dave Sheldon, and the Road Warriors, who hugged and were friendly with one another in what I believe was the first time the two have seen each other since the split. Apparently Carl Moffat, Jason the Terrible, received a large, undisclosed out-of-court settlement this past week in his $1 million lawsuit against Stu Hart and Stampede Wrestling over career-ending injuries suffered during the Stampede van accident several years back. The case was scheduled to go to court this month. Lightning Kid worked shows in Maryland for Wynn and Muth this past weekend. Eddie Sharkey has PWA dates on November 28th at the Spring Inn in Minneapolis and December 7th at Roper's in Fridley. His November 9th show included Hawk and Kensuke Sasaki as a team for the first time, plus Masa Saito and Brad Reingens beating Lightning Kid and Jerry Lynn. Hawk will probably work some indie dates in Minnesota. Dream Warriors and manager Ronnie Lotz were guests on a Chicago talk show called Color TV when a fan in the audience, actually Windy City worker Johnny Mercedes aka Mark Gallo, asked them some questions and Dream Warriors beat the guy up. WCW. Paul Orndorff debuted as a heel managed by Medusa on the November 16th television tapings and beat Ron Simmons via count out in his first night in a non-title match. In addition, Charles Skaggs, who worked as Flying Scorpio in Japan, is expected to debut at the Clash as Simmons' partner in the Ghetto Street fight since Robbie Walker, Simmons' original partner, was fired earlier in the week. Even though Skaggs has a lot of potential and has a finishing move off the top rope that is equal to anything in the business, it appears his prime qualification for being chosen as a replacement in the Ghetto Street fight isn't that he has a lot of potential or a hot finishing move. Orndorff came in for the show airing Saturday and Jim Ross brought up the problems he's been having with Ron Garvin, which tells you some kind of agreement has been worked out with Smoky Mountain if Ross is going to acknowledge another promotion's feud. Orndorff also challenged Simmons for the match that airs on November 28th. Also in were the Terminators, Mark Laurinaitis and Al Green, from Florida, but they lost to Brad Armstrong and Marcus Bagwell. Later Sting and Van Hammer teamed against Cactus Jack and Rick Rude, ending with Barbarian, Tony Atlas and Big Van Vader run-in, making it 5-on-1. Simmons made a run-in, however in the melee Vader splashed Sting and left him laying. Later when Harley Race and Vader were doing an interview, Sting broke a 2x4 on Vader, who sold it. Race then did an interview asking for the Vader vs. Dustin Rhodes King of Cable match to be postponed, but Bill Watts said no way. So they did the match, and they had what appeared to be 3 judges at ringside. At least Hiro Matsuda, Ole Anderson and Larry Zabishko were taking notes at ringside during the match. However, Vader won with a splash after Rhodes took a great spin bump off a clothesline on the floor. On TV for November 28, Hammer pinned Jack with a leg drop. They did an angle for Tex Slashinger and Shanghai Pierce doing a program with Tom Zink and Johnny Gunn, a tag match with Eric Watts and Kensuke Sasaki beating Arnold Anderson and Steve Austin, managed by Paul E. once again. Ended with Watts making Anderson submit to the STF in a finish guaranteed to cause a lot of controversy once it airs. TV main saw Orndorff versus Simmons. Medusa interfered and Simmons chased her. After a ref bump, Rude piledrove Simmons on the floor, so Orndorff won the match via count out. From the comments on television and radio over this weekend, they seem to be leaving it open-ended on whether or not they're open to the idea of Jake Roberts returning at some point, although he's definitely not in any short-term plans. Starrcade will have Masachono versus Great Muta for the NWA title. That match is a definite. A WCW singles title match, Simmons versus Rude. Tag title match, Steamboat and Douglas versus Pillman and Austin. King of Cable finals, Sting versus Vader. Maybe a Wyndham versus Rhodes grudge, and I'd heard talk of a Hammer versus Atlas arm wrestling match as well, although all except Chono Muta is speculation at this point. Battle Bowl will consist of 4 blind draw tag matches and end with an 8-man battle royal. One of the matches will be drawn at the Clash. Jushin Liger will also appear. It appears at this point to look good on paper. The price on pay-per-view will be raised from $19.95 to $24.95, so with WWF cutting back on price for Survivors and WCW raising for Starrcade, they're both charging the same for their next PPVs, with 4 cents of each order going to Starlight Foundation. Working idea is for the January Clash to be from Milwaukee. Jesse Ventura arm wrestling deal is down to Vader, Simmons and Hammer, and maybe one more after the tapings on November 10th with Vader over Koloff, Simmons over Barbarian, and Hammer over Vegas. No word on Anderson and Eden's future. Both men's contract expires in early January. Anderson is working singles at a lot of the houses from this point forward with Watts. The promotion definitely wants to keep Anderson in some capacity, which may include a booking committee position, but it's doubtful they'll renew his $260,000 salary. Eden's future is less secure. Koloff is out of action with a hernia. Jim Herd's meeting a few weeks back was with Bill Shaw, not Bob Dway as mentioned in last week's issue. Dangerously's interviews for the Medusa angle have been tremendous. They are advertising Simmons versus Dan Spivey WCW title matches at the house shows in December. Don't know if that's a red herring for Orndorff, or maybe someone who is going to turn like Wyndham. I'm going under the assumption Wyndham is turning at the Clash only because the WCW magazine, which hit the newsstands the day before the Clash, already had a story on Wyndham breaking up with Rhodes, since the original plan was for the breakup to take place weeks ago, well before the magazine would have reached anyone. Obviously it may not happen, as nothing happens until it has happened, no matter what is in the planning stages on any given day. Chris Benoit won't be coming in, at least not at any time soon. He didn't sign the contract offered. It appears since the company needs a heel tag that Benoit not coming will force the company to put Pillman and Steve Austin as a regular tag team after all. They've worked together at several TVs and many house shows. Bill Watts claimed on the 900 number that the company would be paying medical expenses to wrestlers who were injured in the line of work, but that they just wouldn't be paying them unless they are under an existing contract which has that provision built in, while they were missing dates for those injuries. His explanation was that the wrestlers had the right to buy a Lloyd's of London policy if they wanted to protect themselves in that situation. The Lloyd's premiums these days go for about $17,000 per year, and I suspect that figure will rise rapidly over the next year. Some local promos have had Eric Bischoff bill upcoming Rude versus Koloff matches as Koloff defending the U.S. title against Rude, but that could be a mistake rather than a foreshadowing. Dangerously and Medusa were both fined $500 as a shoot for their language on the pay-per-view, words like bitch, hooker, and bastard in specific. Eric Watts did his first job, which will air in a few weeks on Worldwide, for Rick Rude clean after kicking out of several winning maneuvers. Earlier in the taping, the Mongol warrior Giant Kimala II from All Japan was brought in as a bounty hunter by Dangerously and Michael Hayes, but Watts beat him with the STF. All the local promoters are being taken off salary after the first of the year and will instead be paid $500 per show with a bonus of 5% of the net after advertising and building costs. WCW Saturday night on November 7th for the 2:30 show with Sting, Pillman, Rude, Wyndham, etc. drew a 2.3 rating, which was its highest rating since June and the highest rated cable show since the Flair Savage title change did a 2.4 in early September. Main Event did a 1.8 and Power Hour a 1.7 that same weekend. Angles on this week's TV saw Brad Armstrong work under a hood as Freedom Fighter going to a double count out with Pillman. Pillman did a good interview after the match, however that angle where the face pretends to be a jobber under a hood to shock the heel usually gets played out better than it did in this case. Dangerously did a workout with Mike Thor which sounds better than it came off, ending in a great face-off with Medusa who chased him out of the building. Jesse Ventura is contemplating running for the U.S. Senate in 1994. King of Cable matches saw Vader destroy Atlas. Atlas worked as a face, but the storyline was that Vader was out of Tony's league, which he is, and Rhodes pinned Barbarian, replacing Jake Roberts, with a schoolboy after Barbarian dominated the match. House shows this weekend drew about 1,200 in Savannah, 2,400 in Jacksonville, and 997 in St. Pete for the A-team, and the B-team drew 600 to 900. The Jacksonville show on November 13th was considered the best house show in a long time with excellent matches with Pillman and Austin versus Douglas and Steamboat and a 4.5 stars Falls Count Anywhere match with Sting and Cactus Jack which saw them brawl everywhere including breaking a table inside the ring. Simmons and Barbarian couldn't follow it at all, so the next night they put Sting and Cactus on last and tore the house down again. Jack's reward was doing a TV job 2 nights later for Hammer. Rude and Sasaki wrestled for the U.S. title with them using the dusty finish when it appeared Sasaki had won the belt after a ref bump, only to have a DQ called on him instead. After doing the exact same finish with Rude and Chono, not to mention how well it was received, it's almost mind-boggling how quick they've fallen back into the easy pattern. All the performers under contract were drug tested this past Wednesday, although the soon-to-be departed contractually and totally departed in reality Steiners were not among that group. Supposedly the tests included testing for steroids since the memo stated the wrestlers would be tested for illegal drugs but not marijuana or alcohol, and steroids fit into that category, although which if it was the case, would be a first. Nobody knows what penalties, if any, will be levied against those who test positive, although past positives have resulted in 6-week suspensions. WCW returns to Cobo Arena in Detroit in January. WWF Royal Rumble, January 24th. Tickets went on sale Thursday night in Sacramento and they did a $30,000 first day which would be close to 2,000 tickets. WWF will also be doing television tapings on January 25th in San Jose and January 26th in Fresno. WrestleMania will be the first Sunday in April at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. The next European tour will be right after the California TVs, from January 28th to February 9th. As of right now, Earthquake's last date is Royal Rumble. With Warrior leaving with no notice, Titan was forced to bring Undertaker back too soon to headline the California shows against Nails, who himself was subbing for the previously announced Ric Flair. The other main event, Hart vs. Mountie, wasn't changed on television until Saturday to Rick Martel, so the midweek towns had that as a changed main event as well. Needless to say, some of the shows didn't go very well. Undertaker was in great pain, so they did 30 seconds matches each night with Nails consisting of a choke slam, which Nails had to jump for, and pin. In Chico, they had a near riot because of the Warrior no-show and ensuing 30 seconds main event. In Sacramento, the scene was really unruly initially after the 30 seconds match ended, but did calm down. In Los Angeles, there were heavy chants of refund, while in Oakland, which drew the smallest crowd since WWF has gone national in the Bay Area, 2,400, there was no bad fan reaction at all. They did get promos for Undertaker vs. Nails out on Saturday's television, so the Los Angeles and Oakland fans knew about the change, although Warrior's name was never acknowledged nor any reason given for the change. In some cities, Warrior was announced as injured. However, during the body of the show, they continued to plug Warrior as appearing in Survivor Series. The other California crowds this week saw them draw 1,300 in Chico, a full house, 1,500 in Watsonville, 4,600 in Sacramento, biggest crowd probably because so many were there specifically get the best seats for Rumble, 3,900 in Los Angeles, 1,400 in San Bernardino, and 3,000 in Fresno. The only strong match on the tour was Tatanka vs. Michaels, which ranged from 2.5 stars to 3.5 stars. Billy Graham did depositions this past week, but neither lawyers for Titan Sports nor George Zaw or Ian got to him as Searle Labs depositioned him for 16 hours. The latest on Jesse Ventura's lawsuit against Titan Sports is that it is scheduled for February in federal district court in St. Paul. Ventura claims he's entitled to residuals on what he estimates are 135 to 140 videotapes in which his commentary appears. Ventura, who worked as an announcer for Titan without a contract, claims his agreements as an announcer on television SNMEs and PPVs were for the event specifically, and that he's entitled to residuals for any use of his commentary for profit in any other avenue. Ventura is also asking for damages on the original merchandising deals from the mid-80s, claiming the only contract he ever signed with Titan, a 1985 contract as a wrestler, was signed under duress. Ventura said that in Hollywood the actors who have dolls made up in their images receive 25 to 33% of their merchandising, while the wrestler's percentage is nowhere near that. He also claims unauthorized use of his photos or likeness on 2 calendars, gum cards, and dolls. Ventura is also disputing the traditional wrestler's status as an independent contractor, claiming that the wrestlers are given a schedule, told where to be, when, what to do when they get there, and even told to do things like lose, which affects their marketing value, which is a classic employer-employee relationship and not independent contractor work. Ventura also claims that his loan contract signed in 1985 was done in Milwaukee when Gorilla Monsoon came up to him with 3 or 4 things to sign and he wouldn't sign them. As he was about to go to the ring, Monsoon told him that if he wouldn't sign, he wouldn't work. Ventura claimed that he specifically told Monsoon at the time he was signing the contract under duress. Savage will be out of action for about 4 weeks after Survivors, but will return December 26th and work dates with Michaels. Bossman's absence will apparently be more lengthy. All-American Wrestling on November 8th did a 2.0 rating, while Primetime did a 1.8, even though the show is now loaded with competitive matches, including a WWF title match. While Titan's strong point is usually making issues focused and not getting its audience confused, outside forces have made that pretty difficult of late. On its television that aired locally, think of all a fan had to comprehend. They made mention of either hyping or talking about 5 different Bret Hart title matches, a house show match with Rick Martel that the week before was with Mountie, a primetime match with Berserker, a Superstars match with Virgil, a Senemi match with Papa Shango, and a pay-per-view match with Michaels. Pushing the champion in so many different directions at once pretty much guarantees none of the individual directions are going to get over the reader's pages. Oregon Commission. Just a quick note to let you know about the Oregon Commission meeting on November 6th. The meeting was concerning 3 security guards who evidently were unlicensed and an overall complaint against Capital Sports, Sandy Barr's promotion. Since Barr had not secured counsel, everything was tabled for 5 or 6 weeks. It was interesting since they said they hadn't arranged for counsel, but did show up with Jeffrey Merrick, who represented Don Owen when Owen was suspended. These complaints are originating specifically from the July 4th Portland show and cards that week. Originally there was also a misunderstanding about Art Barr. Art received his license on October 13th, so he did have a license when he wrestled on October 24th. During the month of October, there was hardware juice on nearly every card in Portland. After a conversation after the meeting with Bruce, Anderson revealed quite a bit about him. His primary concern is the safety of the wrestlers. He is concerned about the stiff in-ring style that Jesse Barr favors and said it was just a matter of time before somebody gets hurt. He said in all probability the commission would have given slaps on the wrists of the security people involved and fined Barr rather than suspended him. Anderson said that in all reality, the commission doesn't have the funds to go through these proceedings. It is going to be expensive for both parties involved. Anderson also said that even if the commission were to revoke Barr's promoter's license, Barr would immediately appeal and be able to go on with business as usual. Anderson was also candid enough to say that after June 30th of next year there very well may not even be a commission and that the legislature would have to decide. Anderson said he's avoided attending any of Barr's house shows as he knows there are bound to be infractions going on. The conversations I've had with Anderson recently have been eye-opening. He is knowledgeable about the wrestling business. His main concern is the safety of the wrestlers and that the rules are followed. I am still very concerned about the comment Anderson made recently and I'd like you to comment on it. He said, either a stable funding source should be developed or we should ban that type of activity, boxing and wrestling. The commission position is either regulated or ban it. Mike Rogers, Portland, Oregon. Response from Dave Meltzer, as far as state regulation of pro wrestling is concerned, I'm in favor of it in theory but not in the way it's being done anywhere. Unless a set of enforced and enforceable regulations are written up that are applicable to what pro wrestling is today, I don't see the value of a regulatory body. The Oregon body comes the closest and have cracked down safety violations, but the steadfast blading ban has actually worked in reverse, with the wrestlers using the more dangerous hardware juicing. In other words, while the law in theory had all the right motives, the end result was only making things more dangerous. As far as Anderson's statement, I just can't see how one could justify banning pro wrestling. You ban someone from getting a promoter's license and keep them from running shows if they've broken laws, but banning pro wrestling as a complete entity is unjustifiable. If the state chooses to regulate it or not regulate it is a legislative decision, but banning it as an activity is ridiculous and would never hold up. WCW. I've been an avid fan of NWA wrestling since I was 3 or 4 years old, and my grandfather and father would take me to the Bluefield Auditorium on Monday nights to see the local wrestlers headlined by Gene Madrid. When cable television brought in stations from Tennessee and Central Virginia, we started following Mid-Atlantic wrestling, and I'd coax my parents into going to Roanoke a few times a month for Saturday night matches at the old Starland Arena and later to the Civic Center. Around the United States, month after month, year after year, pro wrestling was a hobby that myself and my family shared throughout my childhood. July 4th meant a trip to Atlanta, Thanksgiving and Easter to Greensboro, Christmas and New Year's to Charlotte. Many holidays were spent in a motel going to wrestling. Our annual 2-week vacation in Florida was planned around me calling the arena in Orlando and the Armory in Tampa and the auditorium in Daytona Beach to find out when Harley Race, and later Ric Flair, would be in the state defending the NWA title. When VCRs became a must in 1981, I had one and my extensive library of NWA wrestling was started. I've got all the major happenings in NWA and WCW history since 1981 edited to be commercial-free and minus boring, or repeated segments. I have an 8M VCR, 2 VHS and 1 beta machine, a little device that cleans up the picture and helps me make neat edits as well as a signal booster. I've spent a lot of money on this hobby, and up until September, I felt it was well worth it. I've gone from a high point of attending 47 live events in both 1986 and 1987 to a new low of 10 in 1992. I never missed a Greensboro, Charlotte, Roanoke, Johnson City and Charleston card over a 10-year span. The first pay-per-view show I missed was Wrestle War in Phoenix, and until this past Halloween Havoc, it was the only major show I had missed. My travels weren't exclusively for wrestling. Atlanta trips always were built around a baseball, basketball or football game, and trips to the pay-per-view shows were part of long weekends that included some other event or concert. I don't regret doing any of these things because I've seen a lot of cities and parts of the country that I never would have. It's just that the reality of how bad this promotion has sunk in terms of morale and pride in the product and promotion has forced me to make the decision that I can no longer support this sinking ship. Bill Watts has destroyed the last hope I had for a resurrection of the glory days of wrestling. The promises, and in some cases, guarantees he'd publicly made before and upon getting the job turned out to be nothing but bull. The product has no direction or purpose. You just find yourself wondering who will be the next to leave. The jabs at the WWF used to be funny. Now they're pathetic. The claim of being the real deal is silly. Any talk about WCW setting the standard or being the wrestling of the future are just desperate words from people unaware that the walls are caving in. Does Watts really think the runway and fancy ring entrances were ruining the business? That is what makes the big events seem special. It showed people the product could be modernized. Does paying your top stars reasonable wages ruin things? I'll tell you what ruined it for me. The week after the Albany, Georgia pay-per-view show, I attended matches in Charlotte at the stadium and in Roanoke. All the talk about an increased performance quality at the house shows and rougher style of wrestling turned out to be nothing but talk. Both nights I saw uninspired and sad performances from the first match through the main event. Roanoke only had 5 matches for the Great American Bash. Then came the August 2nd card in Baltimore, and when I saw the television the next week, my spirits picked up again. It was very short-lived, however. After seeing a TV taping in August and a house show in Knoxville, I felt sick toward the Watts product. Then I saw the Clash. It was pitiful seeing Ric Flair, the Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, and Tully Blanchard. It made the present crew look even more low budget. I went to house shows in September in Charleston, West Virginia, and the Omni. Those were the last shows I've attended. Poor crowds and bad matches was my return on my $12 investment. What was wrong? I thought to myself, is it just me? I was still taping and editing the TV shows, hoping to keep that part of my wrestling interest alive. Well, after the weekend of October 10th to 11th, I decided to stop taping the wrestling shows. Bill Watts isn't going to shove his son and Van Hammer down my throat. The Steiner situation seems to be just the beginning of Exodus, I'm sure. The company needs to die. Fighting it only makes it worse. It needs to die. Halloween Havoc made me sick. The only bright spots in the company are Brian Pillman, Ricky Steamboat, Arnold Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Barry Windham, Rick Rude, Steve Austin, Sting, Dustin Rhodes, and maybe Shane Douglas. But it's just a matter of time before most of these guys are run off as well. I feel like I was the one bitten by a snake watching the last pay-per-view. But there is no anti-venom for me. I watch television when I'm around, but there is no more rushing home to catch the shows. There's no more taping. The only house show I'm planning on attending at any time in the future is the December 13th Greensboro show to see the new Coliseum for the first time. It's sad because WCW has lost a loyal fan. Ric Flair was a god to me. When he left, I always blamed him and have damned every move he made since. Now I blame everyone running the company for trashing something that brought so much entertainment to me and millions of others for so many years. NWA. Rest in peace. I can't stand to watch this happen anymore. Gary Morgan. Bluefield, West Virginia. On October 30th, Gary Juster of WCW called me saying he read my letter recently in the Observer regarding the incident of ticket sales for the show in Kansas City. He said he wanted to apologize about it and explained the problem to me and said that it would be corrected. He said he was sorry that this happened. I want to thank Mr. Juster for his phone call as it caught me by surprise to get a response from the company. I now believe WCW cares about its fans. WCW